Kia ora koutou. Welcome to our Policy and Projects Committee meeting, Wednesday, 10th of April. I'll start with a Karakia. Mai te pai mōna, raro ki te tai, mai te awa tonga, raro ki te awa raki, tēnei te hapuri, awhi ai taratahi, whānau, hara mai te toki, haumie, Apologies.
Need anything from Ra?
I texted him, I haven't heard.
No apologies. Conflicts of interest declaration. Those. Public forum. Oh. Easy. Confirmation of the minutes from our previous meeting. We have one recommendation that they're true and correct record. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ayling. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we're going to jump forward to item. Thank you, Johannes. 6.5, welcome along to the table. Consents update.
Assistant.
And his assistant. Just before you get started, Chair and morning committee, just want to note that the recommendation for this report got left off the report, and the recommendation is just to receive the report. Sorry about that. Lauren.
No. And this is just a basic update. However, one difference from the previous report in terms of the consents update is that I also added in a section in terms of the compliance report to Māori around the drinking water. So that is the first annual report that we've so to the
regulator.
The regulator, yeah. We've been doing quarterly reports, monthly reports since the beginning of last year, but this is the first one against the new drinking water rules and drinking water quality assurance rules. And overall, because we had the upgrade at Frederick Street, that was one of the main causes where we've had non-compliances. So I'm not expecting anything from Te Māori in terms of enforcement or anything like that. But yeah, that's the general sort of report. Any questions about that? We'll move on to the consents.
Do you have any feeling for what's happened across the country in terms of
There's a
what you make?
I mean, for instance, there's been an instruction gone out to Queenstown to get protozoa. We've had some communication where they've said these list of sites or water treatment plants don't have any protozoa barrier, and so that seems to be what they're concentrating on in terms of, because we've got a protozoa barrier, bacteriological barrier, we've basically got everything there. It's just some upgrades in that we're not able to demonstrate all the time that we're compliant. So yeah, there's a lot out there and that they're focusing on. And I know there's one council which has 20 water treatment plants, and they've been told that they need to upgrade 12 of them in 12 months or something like that. So there's a lot out there.
So when we tell people that in terms of drinking water, we're relatively well placed, that's true.
Oh, yes, correct. In terms of, yeah, we've got all the barriers. It's just, yeah, tidying things up as a lot of things.
Can I clarify to that? So you said in your report we were non-compliant because we were unable to measure. In the areas where we did measure and the results that we did take, we were compliant.
Correct. Yeah. it's a very prescriptive. For instance, the 2.2 in terms of samples taken. So we were supposed to take quarterly samples within the network for a whole range of metals in that. And we took it in July rather than June. So we missed out that second quarter. So we've taken 4 over the year, but it has to be quarterly. So it's just getting those processes and that in place to remind us on those sort of more irregular sort of samples to make sure we're taking them.
Councillor Della.
Thank you, Steve. Lawrence, I'm just wondering if you can, for the people that don't understand protozoa and protozoa barriers, can you just do a briefing on what you're talking about?
Sure.
Because I don't think a lot of people will understand.
Your more common bacteriological, we use E. coli as a measure.
Yeah.
For instance, Giardia is a commonly known protozoa.
Yeah.
So that's a lot more resistant, and your chlorine, that's why you'll have different barriers. So that's where the UV upgrade did. That UV upgrade gives us bacteriological and protozoa compliance. But then the chlorine adds that extra barrier, and that's when, if tomato, you ever hear tomato or why they're talking about a multi-barrier approach. So we've got a good sort of groundwater source or in the catchment at Kapatangata. Then your treatment in terms of UV and all the sampling, and then your chlorine disinfection before it goes into the network, which is your sort of multi-barrier approach.
No, so, yeah, it's it's just highlights the need to use chlorine.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. The other question I've got is, you've highlighted non-compliances. At the bottom, you've put a number of these issues have been updated with the controls upgrade, etc. It's basically all those that have been updated. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if not, what's missing? There's none
Well,
missing there, is it?
For instance, we've been struggling to get some controls
Conductivity
upgrades.
probe, yeah.
So we've got the conductivity probe in and measuring, but again, it's that we need to have it going into the SCADA system. So it's getting the technical expertise to make sure that is added in, and coordinating the electrician to connect all the wiring and go into the control system.
So that's yet to be done.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool.
Yep.
And generally, we're progressing with the consenting water race, the 2 water races together, and updating the Kaipatanga surface take to talk to Greater Wellington. Any questions on that?
Lawrence, I just had one question around the Carden landfill.
Yes.
And the wording that you've used in the status
Mm-hmm.
around the desludging of the ponds. In our LTP,
Yes.
isn't the desludging of ponds planned over 10 years?
7.
So
So it's 1 pond in year 1 of the long-term plan. The next pond is in year 4 of the long-term plan, and the next pond is year 7 of the long-term
So
plan.
should that be pond singular rather than ponds plural in this?
So just to probably, if I can may add, there's going to be the desludging and then the process that follows. It's not necessarily that it will be treated at the landfill area. It is just an option when we consider various options of what is the best way to deal with the sludge. And then with the first desludging happening in the first 3 years, that might give us direction of what's required over a 10-year period.
Okay, it's just when I read it, it was read like the 3 ponds were going to be desludged within the 3 years. That's just how I read it.
Okay, sorry about that.
Noted.
That's probably correct, and you can change that. Yep. But it's more to reflect where the actual disposal route is for what they're actually looking at in terms of the consenting of it.
Any further questions on the consent? No? Okay. I'm happy to move the motion that we receive the report. Thank you, Councillor Cherry Campbell, seconded. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Lauren. Okay, we'll go back to item 6.1, Ruamahanga Strategy Review Update, page 12.
Thanks, Miles. Commissioner, welcome Sky to the table.
Yeah.
Okay. Kia ora koutou. So this is just a very brief update on where we're at with the Ruamahanga strategy. So obviously we did that workshop last October where we talked about the international, national, regional context that we're in with climate change legislation and work. And then as a council, we have our Ruamahanga strategy, which is our climate change strategy, and that was adopted in 2020. And due for review this year. And so, yeah, under that strategy, we have the same targets as the Paris Agreement. So reducing our greenhouse gases, increasing our reservoirs, so our plantings, and then reducing our biogenic methane as well. And then under that strategy is also that we would create an action plan for council, businesses and the community as well. Since 2020, when the review, when the strategy was initially published, we've had massive change in circumstances, global pandemic, lots of inflation, international conflicts, and then as well as the big weather events that we saw last year. And then equally, so when we did the workshop last year, I think it was 4 days after the election or something, so we're a bit
Shell shock.
uneasy, not uneasy, wondering what was going to happen. So obviously we've had a shift in some areas, but our commitments to climate change have remained under the new government. And so with the review, there's a list of things that I've said that we want to consider going forward in the next year. So a review of the targets that we've got currently, incorporating a strategic framework into the strategy so that we can more easily measure decision making, establishing reporting frequency, reviewing and amending the action plan, targeting engagement with mana whenua and marae partners, targeted engagement with other communities of place, identity and interest, and then as well as standard consultation for the community at large. So these are not all necessarily set in stone, but these are things that I want to look at potentially doing so that we have a strategy that reflects our community as well as what I think are really cool ideas. So yeah, that was just just a very brief update as to where we are and just to ensure that you're all up to date with what I'm doing. Yes, questions if anyone has.
Only, we've got the Ruamahanga strategy and Ruamahanga roads, whether there's clear separation between the two and what we're actually talking about on that, whether there's a way to identify the Ruamahanga strategy as a climate or an environment strategy as slightly distinct from the roading strategy, infrastructure strategy.
Yes.
An observation.
Insert the word climate in front of the strategy.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Cool.
Sky, yeah, I think that's a good idea, Dale, because I was a little bit confused.
Finally had one.
Yeah, you did.
That's because you're upset
But I think the word Ruamahanga, is anything with Ruamahanga it means a joint strategy between two councils, basically. And that's where I see I've highlighted that the strategy needs to be agreed by both councils. So we've got to get that across the line, obviously. But also up in your strategy review process, that second to last bullet point, targeted engagement with other communities of place, identity and interest. What do you mean by that?
So it's just a way of defining what different sort of communities there may be. So obviously, community of,
Just Wairarapa, it's wide.
so like you can have community of place as say like the South Island, Ngawi community,
Okay,
or
I'm with you.
that point.
District.
Whereas identity is if you've got a certain, whether you're Māori or you're
Yeah, I'm with you.
affiliate to a certain church or something. And then interest is maybe you'll play hockey or, so just different ways of
Rural
defining.
communities,
Yeah.
end up
Rural
with
community.
different sorts of plastic versus, what urban communities have.
Yeah, so it's just a different way of like trying to look into what our different communities within
Yes,
Carterton and South Island.
understand. Thank you.
Just, I should know this, but I don't. Is this a strategy for the council or for the districts?
That's where it's a little ambiguous at times and things we might want to consider making more. So the targets are for the council as an organisation, but then the action plan is for council, businesses and community as well. And so, and that's where the review of targets would come in. Do we want to make it very obvious that they're just targets for us as a corporate sort of council? Or do we want to be making that more wide as a district? Do we want to see our emissions go down as well or whatever?
Well, we can't meet target unless the community is on side and steps up to play their part.
That's a very good point. Council often ends up leading some of the initiatives on this. So, the mayor and his recycling, bent, particularly with soft plastics, with green waste, with batteries, with all of that kind of stuff, can help lead the community towards changing the outcome. And we find the same thing with proposed where we're looking at food waste and diverting food waste from the landfill. So we can lead the initiative, which will end up reducing our biogenic methane because that ends up in landfill and creates methane in the landfill. But if we lead the initiative, we can actually try to encourage the community to change their behaviour, which will then, whilst it feels like it's a council initiative, it actually ends up with a community benefit.
Yeah.
But the targets we're talking about, they are for the district.
The targets that are currently in the strategy are for council.
Are for council, yeah. Okay. So nothing to do with how many pine trees are planted.
Not unless
We plant some ourselves.
To a small forest.
Yeah.
Good.
Any further questions, Sky?
Very good.
Thank you, Sky. We have a couple of recommendations. First one is that we receive the report. I'm happy to move that. We have a seconder. Thank you, His Worship. And all in favour?
Aye.
Thanks. And the second recommendation is that we agree to the commencement of the Ruamahanga strategy review. Councillor Della, Deputy Mayor Williams, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay,
Thanks, Guy.
thanks, Scott. Thank you. 6.2, Māori Responsiveness Action Plan update.
Koutou katoa. This report provides you with an update on our Māori Responsiveness Plan. I'll take the report largely as read. I hope it was quite straightforward. But just to firstly acknowledge the work from particularly committed staff that have gone into achieving where we are today in this plan, including Te Whakapono Waikare, who has recently left us, but really increased and hopefully supported you as council in increasing the cultural knowledge and understanding, and also acknowledging Cherie Dewberry, who has been at council for a wee while now, but is coming full-time into our Māori liaison team as well. So formally welcome her into our team. In terms of the focus, so you'll see in the plan attached, there's a lot of mahi, a lot of work in there. Just acknowledging also that we work across the other two councils. iwi and hapu, work outside our district boundaries. So in our Māori liaison space, there is work that they join together and work across the whole Wairarapa district on. So we lean on our partners in that way at the other two councils. Our focus, there's a summary at the end going forward, but largely around supporting our organisational capability. And as Sky reflected just before, a lot of Cherie's role is also supporting our other council staff in completing the work that they need to do in that space. These roles and this team works quite across our council to support them to achieve what they need to as well. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor Lawrence.
I have one just for some background for me, things haven't been run forever. The first sentence in the background talks about CDC recognising the Declaration of Independence of New Zealand 1835 as a founding document of Aotearoa. Presumably that needed a resolution of council? Well, I just wondered when that was.
To recognise, I'm not sure if it's been a resolution that's been long-standing for a wee while.
It's in the MOU with Ruamāhanga. So when we adopted the memorandum of understanding with the hapu,
it's a fair question because the government hasn't recognised that. Would a council? We recognise the treaty. There is much debate about the legality or the standing and constitution of the Declaration of Independence, which suggests that Māori are therefore independent.
We can certainly have a look at that, but I would say I'm not sure aware of a formal resolution, but it would be probably in.
Some of us personally might have a personal view, but this is about council. And it's a legal question.
Well, it is a legal question because I just wonder if we've had any advice as to what exposure that might create for council in terms of
when was it?
Things that arise.
When precisely was it? I don't recall it in 2014.
The MOU being adopted.
No, the acceptance of the declaration. It was so it only appeared in the.
Do some work on that, yeah, for sure.
I mean, the treaty
MOU was done when Mayor John Booth.
It was in our oath when we became councillors, wasn't it?
My understanding is it's after the treaty training is it's a sequence of events.
Yes.
That if an organisation has a commitment to relationships with iwi, then you accept that sequence of events that brings us through to now, rather than specifically picking out one or two or three documents and endorsing and leaving others out. That's my understanding of it.
Accepting a sequence of events does not necessarily mean you accept the legal and constitutional obligations that come with the document that you are adopting formally as a council document that the government hasn't done.
It does say the words recognises.
That's right.
Say that council adopts.
No, it says
recognising the Declaration of Independence, which is the sequence.
And therein is the legal question round that Councillor is asking. Yeah. What does it mean, recognise?
We can do some work on that, certainly.
I mean, not personally, I'm Māori. So Māori have a particular view about that, but it's up to council. Good question.
Just a comment, Jerry, if I may, Mr. Chair. This reads really well. Like for a council of this size, when you look down through the checklist of commitments that the council and staff particularly are making towards this around the signage and the training and the language and that. I mean, it's really well done. I guess I just want to acknowledge and thank the leadership teams in this regard, and also for the rest of the staff for putting their hands up and taking advantage of the opportunity. I know, plenty of us have gone through various trainings and Terrell programs, and I just really appreciate the fact that it's available, and that enough of our team are investing. So thank you.
Just noting, Mr. Chair, on page 17, the photograph and the referral to the wastewater treatment, the briefing yesterday at combined councils was a superb briefing. The notes and the report that were attached to that. I think the level of silence reflected a degree of awe, myself personally, but then I'm a little biased being from Karakia. There's a lot of well done in there, Jeff, for that work. Seriously. That's all I know.
It just to show that I do read the small print. Page 21.
Lucky you got it.
Yeah, and got full glasses. So on page 21, under 1.2, strengthen relationship with Māori mana whanua. Maintain relationships with Huanui, Rangi Marae and Hapu Ngāti Karawhitia. Completed. Should that be ongoing?
It should be ongoing, yes.
Yeah.
As the two there, yeah. And it is very much ongoing relationships.
Yeah.
And supporting you as councillors and our team to maintain those relationships particularly as we face challenges. Guy talked about climate change, but also in the emergency management space. So a lot of has come out of Hawke's Bay and the Gabrielle recent report by Mike Bush around the engagement with mana whenua and Hapu and the work that they did. And, so yeah, as we evolve and we do different work, certainly they're ongoing relationships. Yeah, thank you.
Take a sleep, sharpens you up.
Got it. All right. Any further questions? Discussion? We have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. We have a matter. Thank you, Councillor Jerry Campbell. Seconded by Councillor Newman. In favour?
Right.
Thanks. Eric?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 6.3, solid waste management report.
Kia ora koutou, Councillors Committee. I'm here to provide a very quick brief update on the solid waste management report, what we are doing and what for the plans. So as you can see in the report that we have been tracking our waste and recycling data through the third-party waste management services which is provided to us. And based on that, the next steps would be to actually target the different waste streams in order to make sure that we seek opportunity to reduce and recycle the waste accordingly and to create a better circular economy. And also the immediate steps is also to put some graphics and signages at our transfer station in order to make sure there is no hesitation or confusion among the people to put the waste or to put the recycling in any sort of manner. So I'm open up for any questions if anyone have any.
Questions?
Just got a comment, Steve. Under the discussion with over the last 12 months, how we reused or recycled 568 tonnes and only landfilled 173. I think that's a great story. And it can only get better, obviously. I'm with Ron on this. But yeah, that's just showing, and I think we should be actually promoting that and advertising that this is what we're doing. Because to me, that's a good story. I don't know how it compares with other councils. So
just to, I'm not very sure where we sit with the other councils, but at the same time, if you look at the percentage, we only landfills 31% of what we actually recycle. So that sets us in the top 3 or top 4 councils in the whole country.
Oh, wow.
Very nice.
Oh, boom.
It's good.
And it must be saving us a vast amount of money trucking stuff.
That's math.
Deputy Williams?
Yeah, just around on page 27, around tip face instructions, around polystyrene.
Yep.
I mean, I know it's a volatile discussion with some.
Yeah.
But just putting that aside, anybody familiar with polystyrene, generally it's in, packing and it's in big sheets. To actually break it up and bag it and seal it, it actually creates a mess and it's difficult to handle and things like that. I suppose my general question is, I understand bagging it to stop it from blowing around, things like that, but is there is there a best practice out there of how the public can manage polystyrene to bring it to us so that we are happy to receive it? Or almost, is there a specific education process we could do, or even an on-site assistance service? Because I know polystyrene is very difficult to manage, and people often will bring it raw or unbagged, and that then creates that tension around how does it need to be for us to accept?
I mean, I don't really want to give into too much details, but the fact is that currently in the country, the best practice out there to collect polystyrene is through MITRE 10 collections. So if you have a spare polystyrene, or if you have got polystyrene in the packaging, you drop it in the MITRE 10 stations like we do with the soft plastic recycling at Countdown and Wilsworth. Yeah. So that's where they take the polystyrene and give it to the building and constructions people, where they recycle it and create the materials out of it. It is important, and it is being pointed out that polystyrene should be bagged, because when it's recycled, it's actually based to do with the recycling technologies. So contaminated polystyrene actually creates much more havoc for the machinery. So all these sort of rules and regulations are mostly being designed and being told to the government by the big recyclers. And that's why it's a general practice that where there are no MITRE 10 or sort of like collection sort of opportunities, polystyrene should be bagged so that when they reach the particular recycler, they are totally uncontaminated and they can give you the best possible advantage of it. Mm-hmm. But as we speak, we definitely have the researchers going on to how to actually make polystyrene much more versatile in terms of recycling with the other waste streams as well.
Yeah, if I can maybe add, that is also part of the work that we're going to do under the waste minimisation plan, is how can we do this better? This is these signs is going up within the next month. That's the aim. But we'll continuously to work towards a zero waste scenario. So that's with all the various waste streams. So whether it's polystyrene or building waste or organics, we're going to investigate all those waste streams to come up with a better way of doing it.
Sorry.
I just had a question. So get a new television, comes out of the box, polystyrene. Would it make sense to put the polystyrene back in the box, which is then wrapped, and put that over the tip face? Is that was that a common practice that occurs that then creates downstream problems?
It does create downstream problems because if you box the polystyrene back, and so I mean there is chances it does get contaminated because of the airspace or leakages, and because how the waste is being transferred from one place to another. It's not just by itself; it's mixed with all of the waste as well. So that's why, for now, it's been a good practice to actually bag it up. But that's a very good point. You say that the polystyrene should be bagged. I would suggest it should give it back to the companies that are actually producing the TVs and whatnot, and that's something Ministry of Environment is working on as well. So that's a whole different scenario.
I mean, that's the goal with everything, isn't it? It's to find best ways for customers to do it right and be rewarded, rather than look for ways to punish them if they get it wrong. You know,
make it easy. Make it easy.
Make it easy and practical.
Yeah. So the question I've got, it's useful to know. Thank you for letting us know that MITRE 10 take polystyrene, because I've just now got a solution for
Not every MITRE 10.
Not every, but
there's not a
Masterton?
No.
Not mostly MITRE 10. They do have this exosol, if I'm not correct with the word. They do have this Expol, yes. So they do take the polystyrene.
Yeah, underfloor insulation.
How many MITRE 10s take, but most of them in the country do take it.
There isn't one in the Wellington region.
You're taking it.
No, so part of the waste minimisation, the lead officers, and we went through that process. I pushed for them to go out to MITRE 10 and to Windstones to extend their recycling of jibboard as well, because there's no recycling of jibboard in the Wairarapa, and that's a massive amount of waste goes to landfill. So they are pushing for that.
So within the Wellington Wide Waste Minimisation team, you're looking at those corporate initiatives. It's integrating corporate initiatives within the stream. I mean, I take my light bulbs to MITRE 10 Masterton because they recycle. They have a recycling point there for that, so they don't go into your land, our landfill. But I guess that's the thing to be looking at, Steve. It's a praise to that. But I just want to say thank you for the science. Been waiting a long time. But that'll be hugely helpful, and I do think Carlton District and people need to be congratulated because those numbers indicate that there's a strong level of commitment by our people to recycling, which is fantastic. We just got to publicise it more. Thank you, Councillor Geller.
We assume that bagging it goes to landfill. We accept it bagged, then it goes to landfill.
You can deposit it at the landfill if it's in a bag.
Yeah. Newbolds, who deal with a lot, had problems getting rid of vast numbers. They've got a contractor over the hill, might have talked about, that accept it in bagged lots. So they break it up, put it in bags, seal it, and goes over the hill to be recycled or something. Because they had huge quantities that are burning.
We can make contact with them.
Yep.
So,
I just had a question around those numbers, Satish. Just the 173.8 tonnes of waste. Does that include the bag, our collection, the rubbish bags that are collected? That's within that 173?
Yep, that the number does collect the rubbish bags as well as the transfer station waste.
So those numbers are really fantastic. So thank you. Great report. Any further?
Final question. Bags. What are the limitations on the bag?
Limitations on the bag as in
What sort of bag is meant to be used and what bags should not be used?
For general waste or for
Polystyrene.
oh, that's a good question. It should be a clear bag so you can see the polystyrene. Plastic polyethylene of Reg 4, to be honest, LDPE, I would say.
Are we telling people that?
Um,
Because I wouldn't see people using feed bags.
Use black bags.
I have to get back to you with the proper information, then I'll definitely.
but that's a very good question. That we might make a comment of that on that.
Yeah, what type of bag? Otherwise,
Clear bag.
Yeah.
people getting turned away with the wrong bag, even though they're doing the right thing.
Some of us have a lot of chook feed bags and you would want me putting the polystyrene in that, I'm assuming.
I'll take that as a note and once I confirm it, I'll definitely put it into the.
Thank you. Great, fantastic.
Thank you.
Any further questions and comments? Thank you. Thanks, Savish. We've got one recommendation and that's that we receive the report. If worship is moved, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Very patient. Thank you.
Well done.
Hey, item 6.4, major projects update.
Christo's been waiting the whole meeting.
Not today, Rania. A lot of application from you today.
Try and work myself out of a job.
I keep the job and get rid of the work.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Report is in front of you and I can highlight probably 4.1, the sewer installation on Lincoln Street that we've just started. We're also in the process of getting a resource consent 4.3 for the climate change solar panel project. And we're working flat out behind the scenes to get the flat point flood resilience going, and as well as the Waingawa process water. Those are the four important things on this report. Do you have any questions about those?
So it's got one on 4.3, the climate change solar panel project. The investment of it's coming through a bit of funding. It's a really good news story, but has there been a feasibility study of the percentage of power used in the payback period, etc.? Obviously, with that federal funding, there must have been some sort of study.
If I may answer that, Councillor Viller, part of what makes it a strong business case, even if it wasn't funded through better off funding, is that the return on investment is roughly between 4.5, 5 years with the generated savings. So the system that was proposed for the budget that we have proposes or estimates a conservative saving of between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. But that's very conservative at the start.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about what this could mean and the information that's going to come out of this once it's operating.
Yeah, thank you.
Could I add to your feedback? So the reason the payback is shorter than is normally the payback on solar panel installation is because we will utilise the power at the time we generate it. In a lot of cases with solar panel installation in homes, you generate the power during the day and you use it at night, whereas with council, we're using the power during the day much more frequently. So all of the power that we generate will be used at the time where we generate it. Therefore, we get immediate payback. We don't need battery storage capacity. And that's meant that the payback period is significantly shorter.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you. Page 32, just a question around the flat point flood resilience. What's been the uptake for or the involvement with the flat point residents? Are they completely on board with what we plan to do? And because I mean, ultimately they will own, you know, this is their community and they will own the maintenance or what's the word? I can't even think.
Asset.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be developed within their community. Are they appreciative, accepting of what's being proposed and the reasons behind it? Like, are they looking forward to it with open arms or not?
Perhaps I could start with an answer and I'll let Johannes and Christo follow through. The flat point communities were very keen to set up a committee to look at flood management about 9 months ago. And that was in between the time where we had lodged the submission for these funds and where we had before we'd been notified that we had been successful. So they came to me as CE and said, we'd like to set up this committee of interested parties from the flat point community to look at flood management. I asked them to pause and wait until such time as we had feedback from our application. That's now been successful. So what we will do as part of this is engage with the flat point community. They are very keen to see flood management happen and some protection work. They're even happier that we've got some grant funding for this to proceed. The challenge for us, as Johannes aptly points out, is in the name, flat point. So moving water around is quite difficult when the surface is flat. And in some cases, some of the roads and properties are in dips and sand dunes, so that makes it even more complicated. We will absolutely engage with the community, and the community there is quite diverse. So we will work through multiple channels to try and engage everybody in that community because they're not always often live out of town. But the work is being seen by that community as they're very, very grateful.
Great. That's really what I was getting at. Sometimes engineered infrastructure doesn't always enhance a community, and I just wouldn't like there to be any resistance that we were imposing something that was, even though it's essential and necessary to protect them, I hope they see it as a significant investment from the district in their community to protect their investment.
Yeah, the next step, once we've got a few options of what we aim to do, we'll have more communication with them. I think up until now, they've just been informed that we're surveying the area and working on it. But yeah, as soon as there's something that we can present, we can do that.
Just one question, the amount of properties there, is that properties or ratepayers, or I think 100 might be a lot.
So is it stage 1 and stage 2?
Including all that news.
Oh, the new subject, well,
No, stage 2 as well.
Okay. And it is roughly. Roughly, yeah.
so the developers of stage 2 contributing anything towards the cost of the infrastructure or not? It's all funded through.
Until we've been through detailed design, we don't know whether the grant funding is sufficient or it needs a top up. So,
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ayling?
I just had a question with regards to the solar panel project. You mentioned that your consideration would be given to any impact it could have on the wetlands. I just wonder what that would mean. Raise temperature or?
No, the wetlands are protected in terms of construction. If anything you construct next to a wetlands has got certain rules. Greater Wellington, if it's a proper wetland, it will be 10 meters. Otherwise, probably 5 meters. I'm trying to get 5 meters away because it's a constructed wetlands. And so it's basically just making sure that any construction doesn't impact on the wetlands per se.
Yeah.
Councillor Lawrence?
Just solar panels again. What's the mechanism for using the power that's generated down on Gowan Road for the council's operations outside that area? Is that's what we're proposing to do? Isn't it basically transfer the power to here?
So basically, council utilizes 5 different ICPs where we take electricity off the grid and we pay for it. Goes into one bill that we pay. So whether we offset ICP1 or offset ICP5, the reduction in electricity cost is then across council. So how that would work, if you would say, for instance, you would generate more electricity that's used at the Gallons Road ICP, you could sell it to another ICP at $0. So meaning that we would then sell it to the event center's ICP at $0 and therefore it's being offset. So it's just an accounting feeding it.
I mean, I sell a bit of power from the panels we've got on the building, but I'm only getting, I'm not getting my retail cost. I'm getting 12 cents a year.
So we don't aim to sell any electricity out because we're going to generate less than what we use.
They'd cover your rates.
Nothing covers the rates.
Obviously, we could expand and then do more, but that's not the purpose of this project.
I had a couple of questions. Just one of them was you've mentioned you're in the process of discussing the project with Ngāti Karukura Whitia. Has that been completed? Because just you've mentioned that you've got a consultancy firm preparing the application. So
Great question.
Great question. So I've been in conversation with Joel Ngātuiri. The conversation was taken received really positive. I've also, following that, he's asked for more information on the project. I've sent that through to him, and he'll communicate with Jeff as well, and then we'll wait to hear back from him. But it was received very positively.
He was keen to look to expand, even potentially on trusts, on the Hapu's lands.
okay, that's positive. I just had another question around, you mentioned we're going to use the Better Off funding. Initially, this solar project was going to be on the event centre.
Mm-hmm.
What funding are we looking at to complete this project? Because it seems to be a hell of a lot bigger than what it was initially. I'm just curious around what level of Better Off funding there is.
So when we went out, so just a step back, when we went out of tender, we looked at the various facilities where we would like to consider a solar solution. So that would have been, so basically using different packages to make up the budget that's available. Through the tender process, the preferred option showed that we shouldn't be doing anything on this roof or any other roof on council's building. So the overarching budget will be it's around $400,000, but obviously there's consent cost and all of that comes in under that. With the solution that we're going for, we're not limited obviously by roof space, so we can add panels to fit within the budget that we've got available.
Okay.
So the picture that you see in the report, concept layout is for the whole area, but we'll start off with a $400,000 package. It will probably be the closest one to the reservoirs. The blue area was similar or smaller than that, and then we'll extend as we get more money in.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Are we likely to attract the attention of the anti-solar?
It's not a solar farm, so we are installing solar panels to reduce our energy consumption. We aren't generating energy back into the grid.
Do they make that distinction?
And maybe just to add, that's why we are following even though this is a discretionary activity, we are following the full process of a resource consent. So we're covering off all, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, just because of that perception in the community.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Which I guess emphasises the importance of that understanding around possible impacts on wetlands, because I have no idea the validity of some of the assertions and claims that have been made, but there seems to be a strong voice south of us in Carterton South.
Yeah, no,
solar panels have a degradation effect on soil and on land, and covering that off with quality scientific evidence and with the support of Kakura Whitia would be a wise step to take, I think.
Yeah, we're involving the Insight, who's doing the consent, and then Kanu Environmental. So they'll look at the wetlands impact, and then we're doing an assessment of the visual impact as well. So we're lumping all of that into the consent, and so we'll cover all the bases as much as we can.
Definitely don't want another mudfish department. Do you have Councillor Gallo?
Page 31, 4.6, Lincoln Road, is that Downer going to come back and do some minor defects later on? At their cost, not?
Yes. So 5.4.5 and 5.4.6 has been done totally at Downer's cost, and they are yet to complete Lincoln Road and the section on Melbourne Road that was part of that project. The only challenge is where we wouldn't necessarily push them too hard at this time is because of the risk with weather. So if they tell us that they'll come and seal it in the summer, we'd probably accept that because we don't want to accept any risk with chip seals failing because of weather.
We put that out in our communication. Just that point that you've just made, just so the community might understand that there might be a delay if they're not going to do it till next summer.
Just for the record, I think we might have it done soon.
So if it goes too late, we wouldn't push them to get it done. If they get it done within the next few weeks, then it's still okay. But totally get that point. If it doesn't get done, we should do some comments on it.
Right. Any further? Councillor Ayling.
Just on the Wainawa project, timeframe are you looking at for the next stages and potential completion? Have you got those timeline roughly done?
We're in a
Alluded to.
Sorry.
I said it seems like it's alluded to that there is a timeline now for the construction of the Wainawa.
We're in the design process and getting a contractor on site. So probably within the next 6 months or so, hopefully. But that's
Having it completed within the next 6 months.
yeah.
So
But there's also communication with the affected parties on site because we've got to go across.
Their land. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll just keep us updated through this process, through projects as to how we're tracking.
So if I may add, Councillor Aileen, so since the council meeting, we've been communicating with the design team, with the contractors, with all the parties and saying, okay, we need to get dates.
Yep.
We want to know what's happening. And at the same time, being in conversation with Kānua as well. And they're very, very, it seems like they're going to be easy to work with, as long as once we get all those dates together and can give it over to them, we'll sort out the process.
So Kānua, is it now the Provincial Growth Fund again, or is it different? It still exists, right? I'm just worried that's going to.
Stationary.
Right. Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
thing, the same.
Okay.
So it will
Making sure it's not going to just disappear into the ether.
be an RDF.
Yeah.
BGF to yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
One, just
Resolution?
Walton's Road, how's it going?
Wilson Road's done, completed. Yes. So at the time of the writing, so that's in the next report, but I believe that the rehab has been completed.
Okay, we have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. We can move for that, please. Councillor Della and a seconder, Councillor Ailing, all in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Thank you, Christo.
Thank you, Chris. Thank
Thank you.
Okay, move on to, we've done 6.5, we move on to 6.6, Ruamahanga Roads and Corridor Access, page 37.
That's why I need to be here today. That's right. Harness meeting.
So
Good leadership.
I'll take the report as read, and then further to your worship's question, the rehabilitation, where it shows 9% completion for this report. So that was at the end of February. That has been completed and resealed. Also had some good feedback from some of our customers. They're very happy that we've rehabilitated the road next to their property. So yeah, so that was good. I want to draw your attention to the bottom of it, page 41, the new AMDS, or Asset Managed Data Standard. So the team has been working hard on that. So through NZTA, they have brought in the new AMDS, and that sees a shift in data standards of how we manage data. New Zealand's very fortunate that there has been so much investment in data standards over the years through NZTA, where there's clear guidance on working categories of what definition of a specific asset is, how it should be done. I can see that if we had a similar approach in water, it would probably look a bit different across the country. Because the system for managing data and roading, I would say, is probably a bit more advanced across the country. That's great. So the introduction of the new AMDS has already pointed out a few glitches in the old data sets, and now we can work on it. And why that is so important is that if you have an asset that's counted twice or counted in the wrong category, it affects the valuation of our asset. So you can think of just simple things like an intersection being counted twice because of the road. So if every intersection counted twice, then we're basically depreciating assets that we don't have. So it's quite a simple thing. These guys sit in front of their desktops and work through these data sets and trying to improve it, but it actually has a massive impact on the work that we do. So I'm really excited to report that has been started, and we've already seen some improvements.
Awesome.
Questions? I have a Councillor Lawrence.
Well, just seeing as how we've been talking about road asset management, above that, you've got corridor access. And you've talked about fee structure, meaning we've managed to recover most of our costs. Ballpark, how much?
So we recover, depending on the activity in the network, we recover about between $3,000 and $5,000 a month, which basically covers the corridor access team. Previously, that service or that function was just part of the general rates, where now it's a user pay, and most of the users, even though there are those that has an event or something, the majority of them are from developers or PowerCo, Chorus, those kind of things. The number of events that we have is that isn't even it doesn't even raise the dial in terms of numbers of applications to be received.
So 50,000 a year-ish.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Hannes, I had a couple of questions. One is around we're changing to the asset management data standard, Waka Kotahi. Is that available to the community? Are they able to look on that to see where we're at as a council?
In terms of what would you want to see?
I'm just thinking about looking forward, if depending on what that highlights, what's proposed in the future, how far does this look ahead?
So in terms of our data quality, I've sat down with Graham and looked at the dashboards that's being produced, and the aim is to start bringing some of that into the report as well, so we can report on we have so many faults and we've created so many new faults, because that's the critical part for us. Every time that we touch an asset, we change the data of the asset, and if it's done, you'll see this afternoon, but we have 1,500. We had 1,500 opportunities to change the set in March. So if you don't get that right, you mess up the whole system. So we can report on that. Whether that is what you want to see, I'm not too sure, because that talks to the discrepancies within the data set that we can, but it's not necessarily meaningful. It doesn't really, you can't take that to a pothole or a fault on the network that you can see.
Okay. That's all good. My other question was just around page 38 and the unsealed road maintenance. I just had a question around the grading. I struggle for this to get past my head that 127 kilometres of unsealed road was graded in February. When you take out the weekends and it's a short month and you divide that up just in 6.1 kilometres of road a day, they're grading. Are you satisfied? Is the roading team satisfied that that work's getting done to a really good standard? Because I just struggle that they're doing 6.1 kilometres a day.
So if I might just ask if you can elaborate on the question, do you think we should be grading more than 6.1 a day, or are we?
Is it being done?
Is it being done? Is that I'm just trying to That is the question.
Well, you could ask both, but
So
is the 6.1 kilometres that they're doing each day, they might do 10 one day and only 4 the previous day.
Yeah.
Depending on the how the condition of the road, I guess. But I'm just wondering, over that February, is the roading team satisfied that that 127 kilometres is up to the standard that we expect?
So when for them to get paid for that activity, so for every kilometre that they grade, there's a specific claim line for that on a specific, so that's specific to a road, and then that will get inspected throughout the month. And generally, with the roads that has been graded, when we inspected, it was of good quality. About 2 years ago, there was a concern with the quality of grading. We addressed that, and I know Fulton Hogan brought in specialist staff to do training with the grader operators, and since then it has improved. In terms of the quality of the grading, we don't have a concern necessarily, but that doesn't mean we stop inspecting it. In terms of the quantity, the 6 kilometres, we would love for it to be more than that. But again, it's within a set budget for the year. So if they end up grading 12 or 15 kilometres a day, it means that we just get to the end of the budget sooner. A lot of these, all the roads are on a routine cycle to get graded, and that fits into our budget. Where if something happens that changes it, so we have a logging operation happening, then we increase the frequency of grading. But that affects then the bigger project because the bucket remains the same. Also, if we add down south, every time that massive events on at Tora, then I think there's 5,000 cars that go down there over the weekend, and they basically just drive it to bits. So then you have to grade it after, so you fall out of your cycle because of an activity like that. But that's something that's constantly on the move, and but we are satisfied with the quality, and we will continue to monitor and continue to improve where possible.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Yeah, just a comment really, that this is a really good report, and I guess anybody, and this is really a plea to the general public who are listening in their thousands. Anybody looking to make a submission when we look at our LTP and the drivers for the increases and so forth, I sometimes hear from particularly rural people that say, we don't get anything for our rates, we get nothing from council. Well, when you look at the detail of the roading program, there's everything from footpaths in the urban area right out to work out of Glenburn and everything in between. So while it might not always be outside an individual person's gateway, it's part of a network that helps make Carterton accessible. And so I guess this is anybody looking to make a submission should really read these sort of reports and get a better understanding of how much work takes place every month. And as you've just explained now, around priorities and around standards and meeting expectations, I think for the budget, the limited budget that councils of this size have, it's extraordinary the amount of work that gets done.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon.
Thank you. Here's one on page 38, traffic service management maintenance. The sign inspections, inspected 75 signs on the network and replaced 5. The one that I'm more concerned about still is sitting on the side of the waterways down Morton Road, Rutland Road corner. I've put in one verbal request and one written request, and it's still sitting there. So,
give way, we'll stop.
It's just the Rutland Road sign. It's the road sign that's been sitting there for 15 months now. So
I can only apologise and because I did have the discussion with the road manager and I will take it back and hopefully I can get that
I
side
can bring it in and put it outside the office.
Hopefully we
Shovel in the ute.
It's broken off, otherwise I'd put it back in.
break,
Yeah.
the aluminium just gives way and the joint to the sign breaks.
It's a wooden 4x4 post and it's just snapped off after that last accident there. So I would put it back in if it was long enough.
I'm going up with the engineer after this, so we'll drive by there.
I guess the question that raises for me, Johannes, is around the adherence of the contractor to fulfilling their inspection regime, because that's not the only sign we've seen laying on the ground for months. And I look at the report's a good report. I'm not going to determine that, but I guess for some constituents, it's the monitoring of the contractor and the performance of things like that. And one sign laying on the ground for 2 months can have a negative impact on people's perceptions around council staff and what they're doing. And actually, it's a case of making sure the contractor is fulfilling their role. I will send you a service request of a culvert the abutment's been washed out. And whilst people did the culvert just before it, they did do the one 20 metres up the road past it. And it's that sort of, and yet they've just graded the road and they've just cleared the water table. And to not see that culvert's been undermined and the abutment now is exposed shows a lack of attention to detail by the contractor. Yeah,
I'm going to say that both those topics I fully take on board, and I fully acknowledge that even though we do a lot of good work, there's a lot of room for improvement, and we are working on both sides, not only the contractor but also the Ruamāhanga road staff, just lifting our game. So I take that on board and can assure you that we are working on it.
thank you, Charles.
Further questions?
Just one, talking about your the budgets versus expenditure versus forecast. What's in minor improvements, and got a hell of a lot of money to spend in the next 4 months?
The minor improvements are also, that's the low cost, low risk budget.
Right.
Under that, we do safety. You have to do safety improvements. They're pretty defined in what you can and can't do with it. So one of the projects that comes in under that is the Miller's Longbush intersection. So we're working through that with the contractor and hopefully deliver that. Then there's also guardrails around bridges, things like that. That's going in. Noting these numbers were in February. We've done a lot of work with the contractor and the team to tidy up these budgets as we're approaching we're in the last 3 months of the financial year, and we need to ensure that we get the best bang for buck for everything that we do.
Okay, no further questions or discussion? We have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. Have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Williams, seconded by His Worship the Mayor. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, finally we have Karakia Whakamutunga, and that is going to be done by Councillor Jerry Campbell.
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o toa tātou ariki, a ihu kara iti, me tu aroha o te atua, me te whiwhina tahitanga, ki te wairoa tapu, aki. Amen.
Thank you, everybody, and I declare the meeting closed.